Welcome back to the Extra Rep Podcast, guys. I'm Josh.
I'm Liam.
So today we're going to talk about why you're eating healthy but still not losing weight. So I think for a lot of people, this is one where they go through and they think that I'll make a change or two changes, but all of a sudden things just don't seem to work in terms of fat loss, and they wonder, what the fuck's going on. So we're going to debunk a few things, but also sort of teach you a couple little tricks, tips, and hacks. And it's probably the reason why you might not be, losing fat right now. So I think the first thing we want to talk about is obviously the balance between, sort of like quote unquote healthy food and quote unquote fat loss food, right? So we know there's
What the fuck's the difference?
Well, this is the thing. So you can quote a healthy food, for example, like let's say peanut butter. A lot of people would classify that as a healthy food, right? But unfortunately, in terms of the calorie content, it is still a healthy food, don't get me wrong. But in terms of calorie content, good fats and that, but the calorie content can go sky high. 60 grams of peanut butter is probably going to set you back like 400 calories, probably more.
Yeah.
So there are going to be these little differences with foods where, yes, they are good. Like, for example, generally a lot of stuff that contains fat in it is, olive oil, coconut oil, all those oils, butter.
Acai bowl.
Acai bowl, yeah.
1,200 calories.
Yeah, 1,200 calorie acai bowl. But these are things that, again, like if you went to a breakfast place, you'd think, I'm going to be healthy today, I'm going to get an acai bowl. Whereas and that might be, 1,000, 1,200 calories, whereas you could have just got the egg and bacon sandwich for maybe 500, 600 calories. So it is one thing there. Of course, we want to be having a lot of unprocessed, fruits, vegetables, proteins, legumes, all that sort of stuff. But we also have to balance that with how many calories we're consuming throughout the day to get the best response. And for many of you, it's just not tracking like simple little things, coffees are a big one, and of course your weekends and things like that, which you guys already know about. In terms of...
I was like, was you asking me? Or?
I thought you were going to jump in there.
I can jump in.
Yeah, go for it.
So I actually had a consult with a guy 2 weeks ago, and I was asking him about his diet and all this stuff. He's like, eat really healthy, blah, blah, blah. He lives at home, and he mentioned like, his mum cooks pasta and all this stuff. And so I asked him, I just said, so how many calories are you consuming in a day? I don't know. You need to know your caloric intake. It's as simple as that. Just because something is healthy doesn't mean it may not be calorically dense. Everything that you just mentioned, like olive oil, acai bowls, all that stuff. It's like, yes, peanut butter, very caloric dense. So when it comes to, and as you mentioned, fat loss foods, if we're looking specifically at fat loss, you have to be in a calorie deficit. I hate to say it, we hate to harp on about it, but it's just the simple results of thermodynamics. Yeah. Now, in terms of fat loss foods, if you're looking for a thermogenic effect in food that burns more calories when you actually consume it, we're looking at protein.
Yeah, I think, for a lot of people, simply probably by just telling them they need to eat more protein, right? It does a couple of things. Obviously, we know, like I said, thermogenic, you burn a few more calories eating protein, which isn't crazy, but it will add up over, weeks, months, and years. But from that, all of a sudden they have to look at food a different way, right? From just like being able to sort of eat whatever they want, they go, I need to make a meal around protein. And normally that means that then they'll either, pair that with some like decent carbs or a salad or some vegetables and things like that. So straight away that gets you, not only probably reducing your calories of that meal, but a double whammy of then boosting your protein content. So that's obviously going to go in terms of losing fat, your body composition, going to have some really good effects there.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate because there was a recent study that came out on honey on how it completely shrinks belly and visceral fat. Now, honey is very calorically dense. So if someone just starts smashing a whole bunch of honey, will they have the same effects? Yes and no. So you still need to factor in the calories in honey. Yes, you may not get the same blood sugar spike, and yes, it could have all these health benefits because it doesn't work on the same receptors as other sugars and carbohydrates do, but still very calorically dense.
It's like dark chocolate,
Yeah.
People say, it's so good for you. Like, yes, of course, in moderate doses,
Yes.
No one's eating a whole block of dark chocolate. You don't need that. You only need a square to get, probably the results in terms of cholesterol and things that, and red wine. Like people have, yeah, the news makes it just a bit, yeah, how you going with some of the stuff like
Red wine.
Yeah, that was, remember all the research there.
Well, I can touch on both of these. So I'm quite the dark chocolate connoisseur myself, and we just had Easter. But we look at the polyphenol count in dark chocolate. We look at the magnesium, the zinc, and then, as you mentioned, the cholesterol and all that stuff. Yes, really good. Calorically dense, saturated fats, yes, depending on what dark chocolate you get. But even if it's like 90% cacao dark chocolate, Lindt, shout out. But it's still, if you're going to eat multiple squares, there's 200 to 300 calories there already, and they're nothing. They're so slim and small. It's like it's so easy to get in. You may think it's just a snack, and you could have eaten 500 calories.
Yeah.
And then I was going to say, just on the red wine, okay, we look at resveratrol. That was the big thing in wine. Now, red wine also contains sulfites, which a lot of people are allergic to, and a lot of people will have a reaction. But then there's also the alcohol content that can completely, just go with the acetaldehyde content, which is the chemical in alcohol, and then the liver has to digest that instead of the resveratrol. So you're losing those benefits anyway.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I think just we've touched on alcohol plenty of times, but like you said, if you're trying to lose fat, and you have an alcohol, it's just going to be very, very difficult, especially if you're going to have it whilst you're trying to digest any sort of food. Yep. So if you're going to have a couple, keep it away from food. That's all we'll go into in this one. But in terms of, I think, healthy food as well, we really want to gravitate, towards higher fiber, satiating foods, right?
Yep.
So there is something called the satiation index. You can look it up, and it basically has the satiation index of foods and basically what foods will satiate you the most, right? And of course, you can imagine the culprits are up there. More fruits, more vegetables, potatoes, I think are king. They're number one. I think it's like white steamed fish is number two.
Yep.
Oatmeal's up there. Popcorn is actually up there as well. Yep. That's without smashing a kilo of butter on top of it as well. But
interesting. Have you noticed that it's a lot of the stuff with a lot of micronutrition in it?
Yeah. And that's exactly what I was going to mention. Like if you're thinking, high fiber, high food volume, all these things that are going to help you feel fuller, generally speaking, they're going to contain a lot of nutrients as well. And that, almost crosses the border between healthy food and fat loss food. It's like there aren't really any just healthy and just fat loss foods. They sort of cross the border together because if it's going to be good in terms of micronutrition, it's probably going to be good in terms of less calories, more fiber, help you feel fuller for longer so you aren't binging, snacking, and consuming, a crazy amount of calories, late at night or something like that.
But that also comes into metabolic health, right? So metabolic health and micronutrition go hand in hand. Sure. And then if we're looking at metabolic health and satiation and then also hunger, they both go hand in hand. And, we're looking at ghrelin and leptin. And so if you're eating a very satiating diet, which is also really rich in micronutrients, then your ghrelin and your leptin levels are going to stay regulated. So you're not going to have a risk for all those, dopamine binges that come with late night binges and emotional eating and food and all that stuff. A lot of the times it can come from, metabolic dysfunction. You haven't looked after yourself throughout the day. You've skipped meals. You've had probably too many coffees with sugars in them. You've had maybe some blood spikes all over the place. Like there's a lot of different things going on there.
And it's funny, like we're both quite good at, obviously keeping regulating patterns, keeping a good routine now because we're coaches, right? But when we do have periods where maybe around, like I said, Easter, around Christmas, around these things, it's like when I do veer off track, geez, I notice it really like a lot in terms of like, oh my God, my hunger is all over the shop. I've just eaten like a horse, but like now I'm just like snacking on lollies, then I'm snacking on this, then I'm changing this. And again, it's because combination, lower protein, lower fiber, lower micronutrients, more of that good, delicious, food full of carbs, full of fats. And again, we're not saying you shouldn't ever do that, but it is something where you just want to keep it sort of in check, in regulation. So for a lot of my clients, I know when they have events where they might be smashing a pizza and a wine, right? It's like, okay, don't worry as much about that, but worry about the rest of the day. Because it's like, it's the pizza and wine isn't going to undo you provided you're back on track the next meal, right? It's the things you're doing in the lead up to there. If you're already thinking, oh, the pizza and wine, oh, well, today's stuffed, I may as well go have a big brekkie, eat what I want, and then have the pizza and wine. Before you know it, it's been 3 days and you've taken yourself 3 weeks backwards,
Well, we can go into the scientific terms of these. So think about it, like you get a bowl of French fries, someone orders French fries and says, oh, it's for the table, everyone share. You're never going to eat just one.
Yeah.
These foods that like are processed and have a lot of sugar and salt and whatever in there, like they work on our brain receptors. So
Hyperpalatable.
Yeah, let's go. Back on the scientific terms. So this works on our brain receptors in the terms of dopamine and serotonin. Now, it will deplete our willpower once we've actually already broken that's what we'll call it a diet. Let's say we've broken our diet. There was a pizza party. You're not going to eat one slice of pizza. You ate 4 slices of pizza. You had a whole bunch of French fries for appetizer. Look at any restaurant you go to and they put the loaf of bread out first with the olive oil or whatever. It's like, if you have one of them, you end up demolishing the whole loaf. And for a good reason, like this stuff works on our brain receptors. The next day, if you don't get back on track with your diet, it is so much easier to slip up.
For sure. Yeah, I think going back to the restaurants, it's just crazy how, like, without sounding rude, restaurants don't give a fuck about the calories they put in their food, right? So you have to understand that their main objective isn't to control calories when they're feeding you food, right? Their main objective is to be like, this needs to be fucking delicious and you need to want more of it and want to come back again and again and again. And again, like you talked about, that works on those brain receptors and things like that. Even the restaurants that have, rough calories on the list, not every chicken burger is going to be prepared the same. So it's like, you go to Grilled, right? You can get a burger for around 500 calories. I'd always add I call it a tax, a tariff. We'll put a Trump tariff on everything.
Calorie
tariff of 20%. So I think that's just a good leeway. You probably go, it's probably around 600. And again, if you're eating out once a week, don't worry about it, right? But if you're eating out, multiple times per week, then these things can slightly add up and you might be having another, across 4 meals, easily another 1,000 calories across the week as well. And then, it gets down to little things like, licks, sips, bites, bit of extra sugar in the coffee, having Susan's biscuits in the tea room. Yep. All these things you psychologically almost forget about. You just don't realize until you actually start going back and being like, oh, I've just had these 3 things. And then it's like, oh, hang on a minute, had a bit of that, had this, that had calories in it, had a full sugar Coke. And before you know it, you've probably consumed another 500 to 1,000 calories above what you're sort of quoting.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the full sugar Coke, because you had an instance the other day where someone mentioned that a Coke Zero, which is pretty much like 5 calories compared to 200 in a Coke and 40 grams less sugar, saying that it was actually worse than consuming the full sugar Coke, which is an absolute load of shit. Like the 40 grams of sugar will do way more damage than no sugar.
Yeah. And this is the thing. Again, sugar just gets converted to carbs, so we don't want to make, sugar's evil. It's not. But when people are talking about the chemicals in there, and it's like, but the chemicals, it's like, but you guys don't understand. The chemicals are in both of them. Like, it's the same fucking amount of chemicals in the Coke Zero sugar or the full sugar Coke. So it's like, why wouldn't, if you can, especially when you're dieting, pick the zero sugar option? Of course, you can fit it into your calories if you want to take the full sugar option, but that leads me into drinking your calories. If you're having coffees, full sugar Cokes, milkshakes, all that sort of stuff, I would try and avoid drinking your calories. Protein shakes, again, that's the thing where you go, okay, if you can get a spike of protein in, you're getting less protein, that can top it up, awesome, especially if you're time poor, but that's probably the only time where I'd recommend potentially drinking your calories.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the person and what they like. Like some people, like you guys saw me at the start of this podcast, I was drinking my calories, but
smoothie.
It's literally 300 calories. It's just a smoothie and that'll keep me going for another 4 hours. And we're talking 300 calories. We're not talking a 900 calorie smoothie bomb with peanut butter and, full sugar milk and all this other shit.
3 pumps of honey syrup. And,
exactly.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where you just got to be mindful, right? People say they love coffee and they don't. They like the milkshake that they basically get in the morning because it's a spike of sugar honey and everything
Can we just
else.
say, a cappuccino is not a fucking coffee?
No, I agree.
I am just like... In what world is just more milk, sugar, froth, and chocolate powder on top a coffee? I'm like, no.
It's a hot chocolate.
It is. It's not a coffee.
I mean,
it's a mocha at least.
Oh, geez, I love a mocha, but geez, they're not. What do you reckon a standard mocha is, like 450 calories or something like that?
It depends on the size.
Yeah.
I'd say 350.
350 to 500, depending on how big and how much chocolate they put in there.
Well, it depends where you get it from, right? So, like, a Starbucks one could really blow up the calories.
Yeah.
Like, because they
cream.
use, they use different ingredients, different chocolate. Sometimes they use chocolate syrup, like, which could be even worse than powdered chocolate. Like, because a lot of powdered chocolate sometimes just cacao and sugar, whereas like you get all the chemicals and all the shit coming in a syrup. It's like
Straight drinking chocolate or in a syrup form.
Yeah. But there's a reason we mentioned before these foods are addictive. Like, if you've ever had a McDonald's chocolate sundae, it's the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah.
But 600 calories later, you're like, oh. And you don't even feel full from it as well.
That's what I was just about to mention.
Like, you can eat a McFlurry or a chocolate sundae at McDonald's and you're like, that was delicious. And you're like, I'm not that satiated. And there's a reason. It's empty calories. It's all processed shit. There is no micronutrition, as we mentioned before, working on those receptors that keep us metabolically healthy and say, hey, you're good. You're satiated. You could easily put down 3 Big Macs and that's 1,500 calories.
Yeah. And that's the problem is, you have something, and if you're not satiated afterwards straight away, it just becomes that mental battle until the next meal, doesn't it? Of like, oh shit, like I thought that would be better and I'd be full, but I actually don't feel that great and I'm still hungry and I could still eat more, which, becomes a problem when, again, you're looking to balance everything out. And of course, when you're looking to lose body fat. So,
well, think about this one. Now, this one, I just still, all my clients know, I think it is just the worst and most useless food. Packeted chips. Like,
I love them.
But
yes.
You go to any party, barbecue, whatever, there's just a bowl of them out there and there's always someone just munching away. And, it's just salt, sugar, and processed fat. It literally adds no caloric value to you, but you can easily eat a whole bag of chips, 500 calories down, and then you're like, oh, okay, I'm still hungry. And there's a reason why people eat it when they snack before dinner or just like while they're watching Netflix at night, they have to eat the bag of chips.
I think it's like mindful eating. It's like people are now distracted when they're eating. And I think that's a massive, massive thing. Like, a lot of people will sit down the TV dinners or whatever, or they're just, again, mindlessly eating, and we both do it. We've done it before. So we know that when we're sitting there, I can easily, like if I had a packet of chips there and I'm watching Netflix or something, all of a sudden I look and I go, oh, the chips are gone. I wasn't even hungry, but I'm doing something just because I'm mindlessly focusing on something else. So that is one thing that I would recommend, of course, is get off your phones, actually take your time, be mindful, and actually slow down and eat as well. Chew your food properly. I know it's very easy to just want to hoe it down, but take your time. Take 15, 20 minutes, chew 20 to 30 times, and you're going to see a much better result from, of course, the food itself in terms of digesting it, which you'll go into in a sec, but obviously getting to a point of like, okay, I actually start feeling hungry, and those satiation hormones will start to finally kick in too.
Yep. Well, we can talk about the hormones in 2 different ways here. Now, I'll give you guys 2 examples. So I tell my clients this all the time about environment, and you've touched on environment before with the training and stuff, but it's the same with eating. If something's in your house, you're gonna eat it.
100%.
It doesn't matter if it's been if the ice cream's been in the freezer for 6 months and it hasn't gone off. One point you're gonna open it and be like, oh, there's a Maxi-Bon there, and you're gonna feel like a Maxi-Bon. Like, it's gonna be in. Same thing with the bag of chips. The other one is you go shopping when you're hungry, because that is a hormonal response, because you're being marketed to, oh, this shiny thing's on special, I might try it, all this stuff, and you will make the worst decisions when you're hungry.
I think that's when click and collect comes in really handy, because you've looked at it potentially the night before after you've had dinner. I normally will eat, and then I will do my cold shop click and collect, and I'll be like, okay, this is what I need for the next week. And sometimes me and Emma will be like, okay, is there a treat that I can fit in, like an ice cream or something like that that's on special? We go, okay, sweet. Yeah, that's no problem at all. It's like, we want you guys to be able to fit these things in, right? And I think that comes back down to having, a 90-10 or an 80-20 approach to nutrition. When we're talking about healthy food, yes, we want at least 80% of your diet to be good, unprocessed food, plenty of protein, plenty of fiber, plenty of micronutrients. But that doesn't mean you can't potentially have something else every now and again and fit it into your calories, because there's health in itself to be able to do that and either maintain your body composition or still improve it whilst doing those things.
But there's a nuance to this, and that is you're actually educated in what you're eating and consuming.
Exactly.
You're having that ice cream, but you have the calories to consume that ice cream. And as you mentioned with the 80-20 rule, you're getting in all your micronutrition elsewhere. When we talk about this podcast of why you're eating healthy, but you're not losing fat, a lot of the people just don't actually know the caloric intake value or the macronutrients and micronutrients of what they're consuming.
And I think it's a really big takeaway from this, because people, straight away, if you're listening to this and you're already thinking, oh, I don't want to track my calories, I guarantee you, until you start doing it for a short period of time, doesn't have to be years. We're not saying track every calorie for the rest of your life, but if you go through a period, be it 4, 8, 12 weeks, you're just going to have so much more understanding on what you should be eating, what the calories in things that you thought, again, might be healthy actually are, and then you can start making adjustments. And I guarantee you, if you start doing that, straight away, you're going to start slowly being like, I start to feel a bit better, body fat's starting to come off, and straight away that's going to start to, get you into a healthier mindset as well of being educated around food.
Yeah. And it just comes down to that, calories. But not just that.
Of course, yeah.
We're going to leave you off with another segue into something that's a little off topic, but it's still really relevant, and that's digestive health. So you could be eating really healthy, but you could have underlying digestive health conditions that you're not actually absorbing those nutrients. Those calories are just feeding other pathogens in the body, like iron's a big one for a lot of people. I know a lot of women with some intestinal issues and stuff that they're always low in iron, but it's like, okay, there's negative gram-bacteria overgrowth there that's actually really feeding on that iron. So that's why you're getting the fatigue. That's why you can't absorb zinc and magnesium and all these other things. So yes, you could be eating healthy, but you could have an underlying gut condition that's actually not allowing you to lose the fat.
I think it's so difficult because, right, everyone's so different. And especially with women, hormonally, things go a bit more probably all over the whack, and it requires, probably a lot more in-depth thought around things as well. But I think it's important to note that it's like, yes, of course, like we've talked about nearly every podcast now, it's like, if you feel like there are issues that are going beyond, healthy food, fat loss foods, calories, all those sort of things, and you feel like you're doing everything right, that's when you should be getting a blood test. You should be, getting obviously someone to have a look at it and being like, okay, we really need to have a look at what's going on a bit more internally. And then obviously that's going to change things, right? It's like, oh, well, you might not be able to have this for a period of time. You might not be able to have that food for a period of time because that's causing the inflammation or that's changing that. And that's when things, just get taken to that next level of, like I said, just beyond calories.
I can give you a perfect example to wrap up. I was speaking to a girl, Ali, last week. She reached out and she mentioned like, I've, lost 6 kilos before in a calorie deficit. And I'm doing that now. I'm training Muay Thai 6 times a week. I'm going for walks. I'm getting my steps in, but I'm just not losing any belly fat. So we're like, okay, we're going to do a bit of investigating, but it's a perfect example of like, it's worked for her before, but now something's not working. And all the same education is there in terms of calories and healthy eating.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. So I think, guys, it's a really great place to leave it. Like if you're not obviously, eating healthy, that is going to be your first step, right? Start trending, start eating more better unprocessed foods, more protein, more vegetables, more fiber, etc. And then obviously still tracking your calories alongside of that. If you can do both of those two things, for most of you, that will work, right? You will start seeing some body fat loss, you will start feeling better. If you feel like it gets to that point where things just aren't moving like they probably should be, and you've started to get more education around things, that's when certainly, like I said, reach out to Liam. He'll be able to give you guys a bit of a test, and you can start assessing that sort of thing as well. But again, make sure your sleep's there, make sure you're managing your stress, you're managing your training. All these sort of things will play a part. It is a holistic look, even though obviously we've just talked about eating healthy and not losing fat today. We know it goes far beyond that at the end of the day as well, guys. But that's the podcast. Again, myself or Liam on Instagram, all the links will be below at Action Fitness Nutrition or at Coach Liam C. Murphy. But until next time, guys, we'll see you on the next podcast.
Thanks, guys.